Welcome back, everyone, on the gravel.
Happy Monday.
Absolutely. It is Sunday, June 2nd, while we are recording. No race this weekend, as we know, but there was plenty of other racing to go over.
Some stuff to cover from last week. Some stuff to cover this week.
I moved, so I'm in Rogers Park now. It's fun. It is commuting.
Far.
Commuting is a bitch. I'm gonna say, like, commuting's a bitch.
Yeah.
Taking 30 minutes on the train, then transferring. It sucks, man, but hey, we do what we gotta do to make y'all some content. So, first off, I'd just like to say thank you for checking us out again on the gravel here at Alethio Network. We got our two other shows. We have Good Morning Hockey. We have Listen for Commands that is going to be coming out later today or tomorrow. But yeah, anything you want to say before we get into the racing world?
No.
Okay. Anyways.
I just want to get into it.
I believe you. I do too. Starting off, we have some shit that we missed about Monaco last week. And when I say some shit, I genuinely mean it.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
we were recording during the race yesterday, which...
last week, not yesterday.
Did I say this week? Sorry.
You said yesterday.
Oh, well, it feels like yesterday. No, so we were recording during the race yesterday. I'm kidding. We were doing it last week. So it was kind of difficult to keep track of what was going on and also, give an actual race recap for Monaco. So obviously we'll pick up on all that stuff here in a second. But, I'd like to do some live watch togethers or whatever at some point. But
we will.
It's definitely tough to be watching a race and try to do the podcast at the same time.
I agree. It was fun to do, but looking back, yeah, it was very difficult. And in reality, we should do a watch and then the pod afterwards.
Yeah, and then the pod.
But we have some ideas. We might be doing some live streaming type stuff once we get more consistent cameras. And yeah, I'm building my PC and
finally
Oliver has his, and hopefully the plan is to play some streaming games, hopefully with y'all. It would be fun. Play some racing games, iRacing, some other stuff. But we're getting ahead of ourselves and not talking about F1. So let's go back to that. Starting off, we had the Alpines colliding twice at Monaco. We all know about the one major one that now has Esteban Ocon, which, looking at our notes, we haven't talked about that at all also.
Yeah.
We have the Esteban Ocon news and his situation where he may or may not be benched at Canada. There's a lot of
likely
talk.
not going to happen, but
I agree that it's not going to happen, but I think, one thing that they already did say that came out was both drivers had to sign an agreement of some sorts, basically saying, like, you're not going to fight, you're not going to crash anymore. Otherwise, it's kind of like a Nico and
Kevin kind of thing.
No, I was going to say Nico Rosberg and
Lewis
Hamilton at Mercedes when they both got...
like Spain 2016, that infamous
where they
crash.
were like, if they crash again, they're going to make it, them pay for it out of pocket. And so I think that makes sense. We have Logan Sargent running a 2023 Monaco wing spec since they have a parts shortage still. And I think this needs to be talked about more just in the overall aspect of Williams being so just in shambles.
Underfunded right now, it feels like. And it also is kind of ruining Logan Sargent's career. Like, I don't know. It's been glaringly obvious that Logan Sargent is not going to be retained next year. But to week in and week out, either have him sit out so Alex can use his chassis or give him an old spec piece on the car, like, they're not helping him whatsoever. And I really respect him for being so, I guess... I don't want to say okay with it, but he's been very disciplined and just cordial with Williams, and the fact that he's not like losing his mind over it, at least to the outside world, I guess. Like, he's been very professional about it. But if I was him, I would be absolutely seething every single week, because how am I supposed to, fight for my seat? And
you have a really valid point about this, and
just
the overall idea that, just look at his F1 rating in the F1
in the
games.
games. They
Bro,
released those
he
this
went,
week.
He went from like, I think it was like an 80.
No, he was like a 70.
No, last year.
Yeah, he was never in the 80s.
Well, it was much higher than his card was now.
Yeah.
I think he was like 77 or something. Because it was like a high 70s, but now he's like 70.
Yeah. It's not good.
It's such like doing our boy dirty.
Like, I love the
That's
man.
all I
I know he's nowhere near the best driver on the grid. He is objectively one of the worst, but he's not a bad driver.
He's still in Formula One.
He's still in Formula One. It's, you always have to think that, even a Lance Stroll, it's like he may be the worst driver in F1, but he's the worst of the best. He's still better than you. He's still better than me. And I think you have to give credit where it's due. But for somebody who's really trying to fight for his seat and his future in the sport, he's not being helped out at all by his team.
I mean, this is kind of goes in hands with this, but I don't know if you saw this week that Pat McAfee had Joseph Newgarden on the show.
I did see that.
And he...
Oh, Joseph made a crazy comment.
Well, Pat McAfee was like, you could race in F1, right?
Yeah.
And Joseph was like, absolutely. Any of us could. We could rock it.
I don't believe that
whatsoever.
whatsoever.
And like my whole thing about this is like, look at Logan. Logan is a prime example of what I think he would do in F1.
Oh, you're saying that's what you think somebody like Joseph Newgarden would do, or Scott Dixon?
Just the idea of like IndyCar drivers being like, oh yeah, that's so easy over there. Like they don't understand what we have to go. Like
both
of them are difficult.
Like Joseph Newgarden, the way he said that, he essentially gave off the impression that if I started racing in F1, I'd be a world champion within the first 2 years.
And it's like, dude, no, you're not. Like I can understand that you.
Well, it's also different when
believe in yourself.
Yeah,
like,
as you should. But he races in a spec series.
Yeah, that's my thing, dude.
He's a great. Don't get me wrong. Joseph Newgarden is a phenomenal driver. He's a 2-time Indy 500 winner, multiple-time race winner. He's a great driver, but there's only so much you can do in a Sauber. So
yeah, literally, because he's acting like he's getting the Red Bull 1 spot.
Yeah,
and he's like, oh, my car is going to be the best. No, you're driving in an Aston Martin, second seat.
You're Lance Stroll.
Anyways, we'll move on to some more Monaco stuff right now. We have Monaco this year was the third time since 2015 that since both Max and Lewis finished outside the top 5. Can you name the other two without looking at the doc? One of them was the one that...
Singapore 22.
Yep. I'll give you the year if that helps you.
Yeah.
2016. I'm going to filibuster so there's not dead air on the
I'm trying to
audio
think.
listeners. No, you're all good.
Lewis was on the podium almost every single race in 2016. The ones that he wasn't. Malaysia, 2016, he retired with an engine failure.
God, this is impressive to watch.
Oh my goodness. He won so... Dude, it's like Canada or China.
You got it. It was China.
Okay. What a W.
Dude, that was impressive to see you break that down.
No, it's just dead air of me, my mind going crazy.
Yeah, but
I feel bad.
I was trying to fill it in. It's all good. I mean, this idea of, not having the two superpowers, it kind of feels a lot like when you get the NBA Finals or the NFL Super Bowl with like 2 4-seeded teams where you're like, okay.
Yeah.
But like at the same time, there's so much other talent on the grid.
It gives me 2012 vibes. F1 2012 vibes. 7 different winners in the first 7 races.
It's a cool thing. I like to have the more competitive nature, not knowing who's going to win every race. It just takes...
Well, I think we're getting closer and closer to that, though.
I mean, I think we're already there.
Yeah. I'm very interested to see how the Red Bull's going to be in Canada.
We will be talking about that later, but the next thing is the major point that I think we talked about a little bit last week. Was,
because we said it when it was happening.
Mm-hmm. But K-Mag is not getting a race ban.
And I remember on air last week talking about, oh my goodness, we're going to be talking next week about Kevin Magnussen getting a race ban, XYZ. The FIA said there was no further investigation necessary on that first lap collision with, Kevin, Sergio, and Nico, which it just blows my mind. Which I agree with that little soundbite.
It's the most accurate thing. Like, this goes way deeper than
it absolutely does.
what we are. And that's what we're going to spend, I think, the next
a little
10 minutes maybe on. But I guess let's just get this out of the way. But the FIA being so inconsistent on the way penalties are given for what they do, but also for who they are given to. Because
I remember us talking about this, I think when we were at China with Fernando and his little tap with Carlos Sainz and getting that, 2 penalty points for literally touching another car.
Bro, it was so stupid.
I don't know. And it's so freaky because I feel like that incident with Kevin and Sergio was almost clear-cut Kevin Magnussen's fault. Sergio could have left him a little bit more space.
So the argument that I've been seeing is, sorry for cutting you off,
No,
but
you're good.
the argument that I've been seeing is that, yes, K-Mag had his wheels lined up with Checo on the straight. Technically, Checo has the racing line.
Yeah.
And they're about to head into the corner. So
I was going to say, Kevin is going into a closing gap.
Yes, he needs to fall back at that point.
I agree.
So,
because I think you have to remember, it is on the overtaking driver to execute the overtake safely. And that was a
failed overtake.
Not even a failed overtake, but there was never the chance of an overtake without Sergio just ceding the position and quite literally slowing down. Like there's no way going up the hill like that Kevin would have ever been able to get past even with Sergio giving him space, because Sergio still would have had the inside line into I believe Massenet. So I don't think that was close to Sergio's fault at all. But
I mean, this just kind of goes into the FIA just being so like, I feel like it's just a random number generator of like, do we give them a penalty? No. Do they get penalty points? Yes, this many. Like, there's no consistency. There's no show us in the rule book where and how you're making these decisions, because at this point I really can't trust how much you're saying to the public when your actions don't follow what you're trying to preach.
I mean, you I want to compare this incident to Fernando in China, because Fernando in China wheel bangs with Carlos Sainz, 2 penalty points. Kevin Magnussen nearly kills Sergio Perez up the hill.
You get
nothing.
You get a little slap on the wrist. Don't do that.
Because they called that massive crash a racing incident, but the Sergio Carlos Sainz thing was apparently not a racing incident. That is Alonso being way too far over the line. That is Kevin Magnussen being as far over the line as you possibly can be.
I agree, but I'm going to play devil's advocate here, because the thing that I also saw was this is also lap 1 of the race, and it was kind of shocking that the incident even got to the stewards from what I was reading around. I don't think so. I think if you try to kill someone, it should go to the stewards. I don't care what lap of the race. I don't care if it's the first turn.
Here's the thing. I am not a big fan of this whole saying where it's like, oh, it was lap 1 of the race, though.
It's going to be chaotic,
You can't act like that, because that stirs the pot.
And it allows room for these drivers to make more, risky maneuvers without being punished.
I completely agree. And it's like we're at this point now that, the penalty point system has been a thing for nearly 10 years at this point, and we have finally got to the point after said 10 years that somebody is finally going to get banned from a race for accumulating those 12 points.
Nope.
Not that I'm excited for it to happen, but to see the system actually working correctly to punish a driver who is consistently over aggressive, as in Kevin Magnussen. The fact that his race ban was on a platter. If any of us were, in the steward's room, and maybe I shouldn't be a steward, but if any of us were in the steward's room or anybody with a brain was in the steward's room, that is easily at bare minimum 2 penalty points. That should be a grid penalty for the next race. I mean, Esteban Ocon got a grid penalty with his collision with Gasly on the same lap.
Penalty, by the way.
Yeah, 400. That has to be a joke.
It has to be, but it's so funny.
But it's like Esteban Ocon gets a 5-place grid penalty for that overtake on Pierre that took Esteban out of the race, and Kevin Magnussen gets no action against him for taking
2 other drivers out with
himself, Sergio Perez, and his teammate out of the race.
Like
it doesn't make any sense.
It really doesn't. And
so I'm at a point where the whole penalty points tally for everybody, I'm not looking at it anymore.
It doesn't matter.
This one weekend has completely invalidated the entirety of the penalty point system for me.
This next point, I mean, kind of goes into it, but will the FIA ban anyone for anything at any point in time going forward? Because it really doesn't feel like it. And I guess you can say in the eyes of the FIA, it's like, oh, banning one of our 20 drivers who are on the grid who, say if it's like someone's home race and they get banned from that.
Yeah.
Like that's going to have a lot of viewership impact to some degree. And, this is an American business now, and how capitalism rules in America, where they're always going to do what's best for the sport in the eyes of the business.
But I feel like that draws away from the sport itself, Like I would love to see what happens if we were to have another well, honestly, I feel like this is very, very close to that. If we had a 2012 Belgian GP style crash again, for those who have never seen that crash, I've talked about it on here before. Romain Grosjean had an extremely aggressive defense on Lewis Hamilton at the start of the Belgian GP, which caused Lewis Hamilton to lock up into the back of Roman and spear him over Fernando Alonso and Kamui Kobayashi. It took like 4 drivers out at the beginning of the race. It was completely Grosjean's fault, and he got banned from the next race in Italy and replaced. I feel like that this incident with Kevin Magnussen is somewhat reminiscent of that. Not in the, I guess, risk of life that it was with Grosjean, but, I think with just the amount of damage that was caused, the amount of drivers that were taken out of the race for it, in the past, that would have been, that was an immediate ban from the next race. And to have something very reminiscent of that in this day and age, and for no action to be taken against it whatsoever, your point about, money kind of ruling all, given that it's a capitalistic American business, I think it is very risky for the future of F1 as a sport and to be, I guess, taken seriously if you are not going to uphold the sporting code.
I was say you could say that about any racing
I
under
agree.
Liberty now.
Yeah.
Because MotoGP is probably going to be the same way, and I know that's going to make a lot of people really, really mad. But my last point on this talking point before we move on, what happens to K-Meg's stock now?
I'll place my bet right now. There's not a chance Kevin Magnussen has a race seat next year. I think he's done.
We all know that Oliver Behrman's coming into the 2025 Haas seat.
I think that's almost, it's almost cut
I think
and
that's
dry
a
now.
universal believed thing. But now do you go, obviously you have signs still available. Do you go for a Zhao or a Yuki to get, someone who's slightly more experienced but still young enough to be a mentorship to someone where, K-Mag doesn't want to be the babysitter of the team?
Yep.
I think that's a better team decision moving forward, allowing you to get more competition quickly, but also to improve both drivers in a way.
Yeah.
Because, I always believe, I'm a very strong believer that if someone's mentoring someone, like both parties can learn.
Absolutely.
So I think it would honestly be really, really good for like Yuki to kind of have that composure being built with having to mentor someone after being, mentored for so long.
That's true, but I guess with how VCarb is going right now, if I was Yuki Tsunoda, I wouldn't actually want to leave there at the current time.
His car is doing pretty good, so
I don't know, but also to have his first 5 years in the sport spent in that AlphaTauri VCarb, it's kind of crazy. Like, you should not have to be in the Red Bull B car for 5 years
to prove yourself.
I think we're now at a point where Yuki Tsunoda is being wasted in that seat.
Yeah.
Either promote him or get rid of him, man.
Let him go to, rally or
just let him go to another team.
Yeah, or another team, absolutely. Aston Martin really wants him, so.
Mm-hmm.
Sticking with Haas.
Apparently they really want Lance Stroll too.
Well, he's committed to the sport. I don't know if you heard.
Oh, the tennis dream's dead?
Apparently. The Wimbledon dream is no longer a thing, and I saw someone refer to Lawrence Stroll as Nepo Daddy.
Oh my goodness.
Dude, I was like, I had to stop for a second and I was like, wow, that really is a term I've never seen used like that, but it works so well.
I hate that so much.
It's so bad, but it works. Sticking with Haas for a second, they are apparently folding their NASCAR team, Stewart Haas Racing, as announced publicly this week. I mean, let's be real. NASCAR teams are hard. Any team to own is expensive, hard, a lot of jobs there.
A lot of money getting poured into it.
Exactly. And like in a situation like Haas where, they're not solely in one sport, McLaren's the similar way, but they have some other sponsors there that really help them with the money aspect. Obviously, you have Aero McLaren and Indy. But overall, I mean, it sucks. I'm hoping that Haas can take some of this budget and reallocate it towards F1, especially
really nice.
Since the car has been really good under new team principal Ayukamatsu.
Yeah.
It sucks. I hate seeing teams fold in any discretion of racing, but NASCAR is the one I feel like that teams come and go the most frequently.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also, there's already so many other cars there that it's not the end of the world that one or two are going out of the window. So it does suck for the drivers and the people that are working there that now have to find new jobs, and really kind of diminishes the hope I feel like drivers have now.
Yeah.
Because it's like, what purpose? What's the reason I'm driving? So I don't know. It sucks, but we wish them the best.
Yeah, just reallocate the money. I would love to see Haas make that push forward. Go back to the 2018 days where you're fighting for P5 in the championship.
That would be pretty sick. FIA chief advised Andretti to, quote, go and buy another team after being super supportive of them joining the sport in the last year. This is an insane turnaround of events that makes me wonder if Williams, the team, is safe with this. Genuinely. Because, I mean, you have Audi going to Sauber. Okay, I'll cut to your camera because you're making a face. But we have Audi going to Sauber.
Yeah.
So that's a team that's gone. You have Haas now with Stewart Haas Racing kind of folding. They could be getting more money, so I don't think they're going to be selling.
Yeah.
VCarb's not for sale. We know that.
Yep. Should be made for sale, but that...
What else? What other team do you go for? You're not getting Red Bull, you're not getting Ferrari, you're not getting Mercedes, not getting McLaren, not getting Aston Martin. You have one team there. That is Williams. Which it really feels like they have...
let that happen.
I don't think they would let that happen too, since it's considered a legacy team. But overall,
it is a massive legacy team.
But overall, what else can interpret this in another way? I physically cannot.
You think the FIA chief is advising Andretti to go by Williams?
I think, genuinely, what other team would he be talking about? I hate to be the Charlie Day with the strings and sunny. It's always sunny, but
personally, I would think he would be referencing something like Haas. But if Haas does get more money from reallocation,
it changes everything.
Yeah.
And so I sat with this and I was like, what like, because like I said, unless Haas ends up selling the team, but now after folding their NASCAR team, that doesn't make sense. Where else do they go?
You know what I would love to see?
Them in the sport.
Well, that, but just as a big FU, maybe they do just buy a team and then run it into the ground.
Alpine?
Yo.
I was going to say,
That's a great one.
Alpine's the only other team that I can really think. But will, Alpine Renault be okay with leaving the sport after so long? Because I feel like Renault...
Yes, because Renault's just in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out. This is how they've always been. And it'll happen again.
Same thing with Honda. Just leaving that out there. I'll let you take this one.
So, everybody's favorite X-Team principal.
It's your favorite X-Team principal.
It's not my favorite.
It's yours.
It's mine. If you're a Ferrari fan, you'll obviously know who this man is. Mattia Binotto was Ferrari team principal for many years, from 2019 to, if I remember correctly, 2022, as last year was Fred's first year at Ferrari. He seems to be joining Aston Martin potentially. We've been seeing a lot of this in a CTO type role, with his gardening leave, as we've talked about with Adrian Newey, seeming to have ended with Ferrari, so he can go back into the job market in Formula One and look for spots at other teams now. Mattia Binotto, he's always been a mastermind at cooking spinalas. And I would love to, go see him destroy another team from the inside. But I think his time, towards like the top of management and advisory and teams is and should be over.
Yeah, I think the Ferrari Finasco is enough to be like, you're good at what you do, but not good manager. So we're going to move you to, Andrew Green's old role.
Yeah, I think Mattia Binotto's greatest time at Ferrari, in my opinion, was right before he became team principal of the team, when he was a top engineer at Ferrari. He did a really good job at that. That was when, I can't remember the team principal who was there before him. He was so good as well. It's okay. That's, my brain failed me there. But yeah, his time before he became team principal at Ferrari was very impressive. So, I mean, maybe if he did something like that at Aston Martin, go back to his roots, that kind of thing. But if he's kind of in a position where he's in that stepping stone to become the next team principal, I don't know how I feel about it. I think his time's over.
I don't think he, especially is joining, from what I've read, Mike Crack, his job is safe as team principal as of now. Depending on how Aston Martin really performs for the rest of the year, and if they can come back into being a top 5 team, I would maybe say that his job is safe. But other than that, maybe by new regs, his job might be getting replaced. Oliver found it.
Sorry, this was really going to aggravate me. It was Maurizio Arrivabene was their old team principal in 2017 and 2018. He has one of the most iconic faces that I've ever seen in F1, and so I just had to look that up. It was going to piss me off for the rest of the recording of this episode.
Well, I'm glad you're not, and that you found him.
My apologies. I totally just interrupted Raven. I'm so sorry.
I'll give you a round of applause for interrupting me too.
You should honestly just start clapping, dude.
Slow golf clap. No. Going back to Red Bull for a second. It was reported from the team that Checo's crash last week costed about $2 to $3 million. And
in this cost cap era, that's a lot of money. Era,
especially, with their renowned what's it called? Catering budget. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, this is very, very expensive.
If the team faces any more serious crashes this year, they could be forced to cancel or postpone later seasonal upgrades as a result of this crash. And this genuinely brings the question of, with them struggling so much in the last 2 races, specifically with, Ferrari and I think McLaren both outscoring them. I know Ferrari has outscored them in the last 3 races, but I can't remember if McLaren has or not.
McLaren's points tally in the last 3 races is 85.
Okay, so
you have P2, P4 in both Imola and
so they're just
Monaco.
behind Red Bull then, which is still fine. But you have Leclerc catching up behind Max, so that's always a possibility.
I do owe a little bit of a thank you to Kevin Magnussen, because if this does hinder their upgrades, the deficit that these other teams have to them is going to be minimized and shrink, and maybe one of those teams overtakes. So in the words of the goated Stephen A. Smith, this is exactly what I've been waiting for.
This is exactly what I've been waiting for.
I don't mean to sound like Cat Williams, but this is exactly what I've been waiting for.
We'll get that clip.
That's a mainstay on my soundboard. But yeah, it is a very, very serious point to bring up, because if they can't upgrade their car towards the end of the season, and you have these consistent upgrades coming out for Ferrari and McLaren, where it's already being seen that the gap between them and Red Bull is closing, there is a very real possibility that they could actually overtake Red Bull as the best car on the grid. And then this whole sneaking suspicion that we may actually have a championship battle on our hands this season is becoming more and more real. So I'm personally saying I do think that there is a championship, 4-way championship battle brewing if things go correctly.
It all depends on these next few races, first off, because if a team dominates these next 2-3 races, you get to a much more difficult sections of track after Spa.
Yeah.
Which is, a few months from now. But
I will tell you,
even then,
Ferrari is going to be nowhere in Canada. The track does not suit them. It hasn't in the past.
I have seen a lot of other things saying, Fred even believes that they have a chance at Canada this week. So I don't want to get your hopes up. I don't want to get
all right. I believe Fred more than myself. I was going to make the crazy comment that Charles Leclerc's top 4 streak this year ends in Canada, but
apparently
if Fred's got our back, then I trust him.
They found more grip and aero with the most recent
That's fair
upgrades. So a lot of the problems they were facing before are no longer a problem now.
That's fair.
Wow. Whereas do the Kimi Räikkönen. It overall is just really shocking with the Red Bull, just because Max has been complaining so much about the setup, the car bouncing a lot, as tokened word last year was porpoising.
Yes,
cars were porpoising.
2022 porpoising was all over the place.
It was. I think that has kind of come back for them, and now you have one of the specs. The upgraded specs crashed with Checo's car.
Mm-hmm.
It really does bring a problem of where do we focus our money and time now if another big crash happens. Do you just build extra parts and pray that you can scratch by, or do you try to upgrade some small parts to hopefully make the car better? It just puts Red Bull in a really, really sticky spot.
Yeah. I mean, even Haas thinks it might be coming to an end.
I was just about to say that Jos Verstappen was quoted that he believes the Red Bull dominance has come to an end. And I think a lot of people are
getting hype. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say starting to believe that. I think I believe that now.
I believe it too.
You were quick with it, but...
We've had 3 different winners in the last 3 races.
We have. And they were all won on merit. It wasn't someone, crashed out last lap and got lucky. Or
George Russell. Sorry. If Carlos Sainz wins again this year, just you be ready for a George Russell last lap crash.
I hope it happens. I really do, just for the meme.
Just for the meme. It's too entertaining.
I also want Oscar to win.
He will.
Going on to Oliver's favorite time of F1 history is the team principal that was behind the infamous Crashgate scandal returning to F1.
So, for those of you that don't know what Crashgate was, 2009 Singapore GP, the Renault was probably the 5th or 6th best car on the grid. Fernando Alonso had left McLaren, went back to Renault for a few years. And there was a very infamous race in Singapore where his teammate, Nelson Piquet Jr., crashed under the safety car.
In a bizarre circumstance.
Bizarre circumstance.
Like right after the corner coming into the straight, and then he just...
But Fernando Alonso, it perfectly played into Fernando Alonso's pit strategy where everybody had to pit. Fernando Alonso had pitted like 4 laps into the race.
Chad Lonzo.
So the safety car goes away and he comes out in the lead. Nobody needs to pit anymore. Felipe Massa has his infamous ripping the fuel hose away moment in the pit lane. So Fernando Alonso leads and wins the race. Funny enough, if you actually really look into it, Nelson Piquet Jr. spun on the formation lap on the exact same spot.
No, I've seen the clip.
He purposely...
He practiced.
And
like during that, he... spins out, but then does a 180, gets back on the road.
Going.
And then people realize, that was exactly where he crashed.
Yep.
And it's like, huh.
So
why do you why are you practicing that? That's...
But yeah, that was all orchestrated by Flavio
Briatore.
To, get big points in for the team. And funny enough, that wasn't Fernando's only race win that year. He won another race. He won the next race.
Well, I think a lot of people forget, too, is the post-game or the post-race interview where Alonso's like, wow, great. That was great timing by that safety car, huh?
Part of me also, I can't remember if it's ever been, explained if Fernando knew that was going to happen.
No, he didn't.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And that's the thing that I'm kind of getting at is when he said that, Flavio walked over to him and was like, "Don't say anything." Don't say anything. And then afterwards, they walked out together, and Alonso was pissed.
Yeah.
So they told him that they gamed the system for that win, and Alonso was not happy about it. And to be fair,
did I say 2009? Crashgate was 2008.
You did say 2009, but Alonso, I don't want to say took a huge reputation.
No,
damage.
I don't think his reputation is tarnished for almost anybody. From that incident.
I genuinely.
It ruined Nelson Piquet Jr.'s career.
Yes.
His career was over because of that.
And it's sad, seeing a driver's career get thrown down the drain.
Well, he's a descendant of Nelson Piquet.
Yeah, I know that too, but genuinely, Alonso still gets these talks about it, I want to say.
Yeah.
Just because he was involved, but it's not his fault. And now seeing the guy that did do it come back to an F1 team, we should probably we should probably explain who and what kind of role. He's going to Alpine in some sort of special advisory role is what.
Yes, good old Flavio Briatore.
It's just is this going to happen at Alpine?
Yeah, and you have to understand, Flavio got a lifetime ban from F1 for the Crashgate scandal, and then it was, over time they appealed and overturned that decision.
All right, we are going to kind of speed through some of these next few points because they're kind of quick, but
yeah,
Raven Gasser.
Thank you. I have no idea who you are, so.
Believe that Kimi Antonelli will be in the Mercedes car with George Russell next year, and I'm putting that on the air.
Oliver Ward, believe that Kimi Antonelli will not be in the Mercedes car with George Russell next year, and I, Oliver Ward, also believe Raven Gasser, who is sitting to my right, is extremely delusional.
I'm gonna send you the post that he gets signed to the Red Bull seat or the Mercedes seat, and I'm just going to open up. I'm just gonna open up the podcast with your mic just half volume until you know.
Dude, I'll say it, Raven. If they sign Kimi Antonelli next year, I'll let you pie me on the face on the air.
Okay,
it's not happening.
We'll see about that. I say that because. Why has he been on Mercedes social media so much? There's no reason.
He's their junior.
He's their junior. Yay, I love Mick Schumacher. They don't ever post Mick Schumacher
That's
on the
true.
Mercedes account. And I don't care. McLaren and all the other ones, they throw in some reserve driver pictures and some of that. But we have been seeing Kimi Antonelli content on Mercedes and ESPN so much that I believe it's a soft launch. Get the fans used to who this guy is.
I know he hasn't like truly proven himself yet in Formula 2.
He's had so many Formula 2, that's fine. He's had so many practice sessions in the older cars with Mercedes.
Yeah.
That Mercedes technicians, Toto Wolff, even the team, like higher ups at the team, are like, oh, okay, this is ringing of Max Verstappen to the T.
Yeah.
And I think Toto Wolff is still really shaken up by him losing Max, to where they're going to just do it to get it out of the way.
Industry baby with the next Max Verstappen. Sorry, I did not mean to quote Lil Nas X.
You mean industry plant? Is that what you
Never
mean?
mind. Skip to the next point. I'm yapping.
Anyways, I don't know. I just don't think Toto Wolff wants to lose another Wonder Boy, personally.
That's fair. Nobody wants to lose a Wonder Boy.
Canada. That was sick. Sick.
Canada is next week. My absolute favorite track on the Formula One
We were going to go to this one, but it didn't work out. I graduate the week after. So.
Yeah. There's a bit of a change with turns 8 and 9 getting a slight change from last year. Grass was placed instead of having asphalt runoff with this little small barrier blocking it, which I think is a good thing. It's a change that kind of reminds me of Imola, just removing more and more runoff, which I love. I think, besides the infamous Wall of Champions, Canada technically is a pretty forgiving track when it comes to runoff for corners. Like, it's a very chicane-heavy circuit. You have 1, 2, 3. There's 4 chicanes on this track. And they're all very forgiving. Obviously, you'll get a penalty if you cut the corner and stuff, but there's not like a threat of losing major time because of that. So a change like this, I really like.
Yeah.
But get hype. I just think the track is so beautiful. It's in a great spot, and there's been a lot of infamous races there. Literally yesterday, F1 just posted the extended highlights of the 2011 Canadian GP, which, in my personal opinion, is one of the greatest F1 races to have happened in the past 15 years. Jenson Button won the race after, I think, 4 pit stops and a drive-through penalty. The race lasted 4 hours when you factor in red flags and everything. They still completed every single lap, but it took the full 4 hours that they have to run the race, and it was just so crazy. Such a good race.
Pirelli announced the concept of developing a C6 tire compound that would specifically be made for street circuits, and I thought that was a good point to throw in right after speaking of a street circuit.
Yeah.
This would be the new softest tire compound, and this is something that confuses me, is why have a whole separate tire for this?
And why have such a soft tire on such abrasive
Yeah, because
asphalt?
It's gonna mean like 7 pit stops,
Which I like. If we want to move towards going back to like
mandatory pits.
not mandatory pit stops, but the least amount of stops you need to do in a race being 2, I'm completely okay with that. I miss the early 2010s 2, 3, 4 stop races. Like, it was genuinely exciting. So to go back to that, I'm completely okay with that, even if it's just on a street circuit or something like that. But I thought you would want more of a harder tire on a street circuit, but let them do their thing. Maybe they're cooking something up for us.
Yeah. FIA came out of nowhere this week with the announcement that they are forcing teams next year in F1 to create more distinguishable liveries. And you know what that means, Oliver?
What does that mean?
More ads!
McDonald's OnlyFans Racing. No, I'm actually very happy about this. That was probably the thing that surprised me most this week.
It's going to be cool, but I do think there's going to be...
Well, I'm sorry. I don't like this
5,000
black
ads.
Alpine, dude. And I guarantee that's like
Hey, man, what the black Alpine dude do to you?
nothing. But I don't know. I think these moving towards all of this exposed carbon fiber. It looks cool for like 5 seconds, and then you realize it looks like every other car. So for them to, at this point now, force them to go back to making distinguishable liveries, this is an absolutely goated change.
I agree 100%. We are officially 1/3 of the way through the F1 season.
Exactly. 8 out of 24 races done.
So, as we said we would do, beginning of the season, we're going to go and do a little bit of a Destructors Cup update, but then also a Constructors and Drivers Championship update. Just some things that we've noticed, some things that we believe might happen, or just some things to look out for the next 2/3 of the season. But
Yeah.
starting off with the Destructors Cup, we have Perez in first after his most recent crash with $2.4.5 million in damages. Alex Albon is in second with just over $2 million, and Danny is in third with just under $2 million.
Bit of a yikes.
For the teams, we have Williams in first, which is not a shocker. We have Red Bull in second, which is a shocker. And then we have Lance Stroll in third because, Alonso's... A lot of Alonso's penalties.
His massive crash with Carlos Sainz at China cost $5 trillion in damage, guys.
Feels like it, dude.
Sorry, I had to bring that up again. That pissed me off.
Gasly and Hamilton are the only two drivers without any official damage cost.
Yeah, I don't know how that's still possible after Ocon decided to kill him.
Because, if you really look at the crash, nothing really happened to
That's true.
Gasly's car.
That's
I think
fair.
it just got, maybe a suspension issue, or just, the setup was messed up as a result. But it was completely, Ocon's tire went over his, and then the car just went boing. Going over to an actual Constructors and Drivers Championship. I'll let you start off.
Aston Martin and Mercedes. Okay, I don't know why I'm acting like this, but Aston Martin and Mercedes are genuinely way worse than all of us expected this year. Mercedes has kind of been, slowly working their way back up in these regulations. Of course, they were terrible in 2022. Funny enough, they scored their only win of the new regulations in 2022. But yeah, them and Aston Martin more specifically are just nowhere this year. I feel like ever since the beginning of last year, we keep talking about this. Since the beginning of 2023, where they're scoring podiums every single week, Aston Martin have completely fallen off, and we now don't know what they're doing anymore. Mercedes is, fighting for the bottom end of the points every single week when, 2 years ago they were consistently winning every other race. But the thing for me, when it comes to Drivers and Constructors Championship, that's more important, and I think what plays into our whole, maybe we have a championship battle on our hands at this point. Charles Leclerc is currently sitting second in the championship, 31 points behind Max Verstappen, which I personally believe is ultimately down to his supreme consistency in the fact that he has finished every single one of these 8 races P4 or above. That is extremely hard to do. Anybody who says Carlos Sainz is a better driver than Charles Leclerc, dad.
I think...
L opinion.
Damn, calling out your dad. Damn. Ruthless. No, I think you have a very valid point in the fact, it's why Oscar has, so high up in the drivers championship, just because he's been getting, P6, P5, P4 consistently enough where that's going to chip away at any sort of standing. Especially
it's in Monaco. Just because of that, Sergio Perez dropped 2 spots to
Leclerc and Norris?
Leclerc and Norris.
Yeah.
And Sainz.
Oh, wow.
Because of that retirement.
It's crazy, dude.
And that, I feel like, funny enough, I think the real way to tell where Red Bull actually is as a car is to look at Sergio Perez's results, because he is average. Carlos
Sergio
Sainz,
Perez. It's the European circuit.
That curse is awful. But I feel like, nobody's Max Verstappen. Carlos Sainz is not Max Verstappen. Charles Leclerc is not Max. Well, Charles Leclerc might be. Charles Leclerc is not Max Verstappen. Oscar Piastri, Lando Norris, they're not
Charles
Max.
Leclerc.
I feel like, what's really important, the way you're going to eat away at Red Bull, is just outperform Sergio Perez. That's the reason Ferrari is only 24 points behind Red Bull, under a race win behind Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship.
Max isn't the target. Max is,
An afterthought.
Max is like the penultimate goal. Like, that is your ultimate destination, is to be where Max is.
Yeah.
Your goal at the end of the race is to just beat Checo.
Mm-hmm.
If you can do that, you're chipping away points from the overall constructors, and that's very important. Does VCARB have a chance at catching Aston Martin at this point in time? Because they
Absolutely.
are only, I believe, 20 points behind them.
And they have outscored Aston Martin in the past few rounds as well.
Does Haas even have a chance of getting at the heels of VCARB? Because this one's a little more iffy, just because, especially without getting points at Monaco, that doesn't help.
Yeah.
But also just because you're never fighting for more than P8, it just becomes the issue of...
But sometimes the VCARB is fighting for more than P8.
Exactly. So it's really just, I want to say, like a dice roll almost, where it's like you got to get two perfect circumstances for this to kind of work. But I do think it's still possible, and something to look out for the next few races.
Yeah, VCARB and Haas are definitely on the up. Sauber's on the deathbed. I mean, in Monaco, they were a full second behind the second slowest car.
Yeah, I think they're just getting ready for Audi.
I think that's fair.
Lewis being in the middle of the pack feels strange, does it not?
No.
Oh, that's just me then.
That Mercedes is garbage.
Yeah, I understand that, but
he is getting outperformed by George.
He is getting outperformed by George, I agree.
He is old, though,
I think after signing to Ferrari...
Oh, he doesn't care anymore.
Yeah, A, he doesn't care, but B, I think since that happened, I think the team is going to want to make the car more to what George wants.
I think that's fair. He's going to assume that role of new team leader once Lewis leaves.
Yeah.
So I think that's respectable.
Speaking of Lewis, and this will be our last F1 point. I don't know if you've seen this yet, but his Hot Ones episode.
I knew it was coming out. We had a conversation about that, but I've not actually watched it yet.
It yesterday night after getting internet at my place.
Was it good?
It was good. There was, a lot of the funny bits that you were talking about, hearing about. This is the one of him pissing himself at Singapore in 2022 in the car. Apparently, shocking news. It hurts to pee in an F1 car.
I could totally
say
that.
it's just your body.
It's
it hurts to pee on an airplane too.
Yeah,
and there's pressure. There's a few G's on you, but driving in an F1 car, pulling 7 G's while your bladder's full. Yeah, screw that, dude. I'm gonna piss myself as soon as I can. But he did say he notoriously uses the bathroom as much as he can before getting into the car.
I would do the exact same thing because you're also drinking while you're driving.
He doesn't drink water during the races. He he says he has a little bit, but usually he doesn't fill up his water segment all the way.
Yeah,
he doesn't think that weight is worth it, and B, because he has a smaller bladder, he doesn't want to have to pee continuously in the race.
That's
and be
fair.
in anguish. So I thought that was really cool. He talked a little bit about him getting into the sport, his days of growing up in karting and all that stuff. Then he's also talked about Roscoe and why he picked Roscoe, and just also finally talked about why he dresses up before. I don't know if you've heard this story, but it's during his earlier days he was running away from the cameras and jumping fences, trying to hide from the cameras, and they always find you.
Yeah.
And so he was like, screw it, I'm just gonna look as best as I can to be in front of the cameras. And
I think that's fair.
And I was like, that's a really fair point. I thought it was some part of him just being a fashion guru guy, but
I mean, he is now. But
he is now just because of what he has been doing with his career. But I think it's cool that drivers are coming out of their shell more. Another fun thing I wanted to bring up real quick is if you've noticed that the 3 songs that Charles Leclerc wrote about last year were the 3 races that Max has not won this year.
I can't remember what the next one he wrote was, or if he did write another one.
I don't think he did. I thought it was only the 3, but he might have done a Montreal one. Can't remember.
It's just incredible.
It is. But that is going to wrap up our F1 segment. We are going to speed through some rally, a little bit of IndyCar. I see you got some stuff there. And then a little MotoGP.
I was going to say, just a few more minutes from you guys.
Yeah. Going to rally real quick. We had Rally Day Italy this weekend with the conclusion of that happening about 2 hours ago almost. After stage 12 yesterday, Ogier was 17.1 seconds ahead of Tanak after being behind by 4.5 seconds going into Saturday. For WRC2, Sami Paraj is 54.7 seconds ahead of the next after 12 stages. Going into Sunday, Tanak seemed to have some sort of issue in the car and ended taking the weekend in 4th place, with Sebastian Ogier taking the win. 9.7 seconds over his teammates in the Toyota Yaris, Elfie Evans. Terry Novo makes up a 3rd great day recovery after going from last to 3rd, 48 points.
That's majorly impressive.
Behind pole, yes. Little additional news that came out this week. The famed Group B constructor Lancia is set to be making a step into returning to rally with the returning of electric rally. They're rolling out one of their newest electric models with a little upgraded engine to compete in the Electric Rally Championship, which is pretty cool. Swing it over to you for the IndyCar, and then we'll go to Moto.
I'm going to go super fast on this one because I don't want to go through the whole thing because a lot of people watch this race. But last week was the 108th running of the fabled Indianapolis 500 with Joseph Newgarden and Patricio O'Ward, McLaren development driver, duking it out until literally the last corner to the flag, honestly, with multiple overtakes on the last lap between the two of them, with Newgarden ultimately coming out on top on the second to last corner of the race and becoming the first back-to-back Indy 500 winner in 22 years. Maybe Joseph, maybe you could cut it up in F1, but I don't know. But it was a race that featured a 4-hour rain delay before it started due to rain. But the Indy 500, you really do not want rain on the track for a course like that when you're going up to 240 miles an hour. Like you don't want a single drop of rain on the track. So it makes sense. There was 8 caution periods as well. That's 1 on average. Think of it as a safety car. That is 1 on average every 25 laps of the race, which is insane. And of the 33 cars that started the race, only 22 of them finished. It was very difficult though, because I guess what I got from this was I've seen Pato O'Ward fight for the win of this race and lose in almost the same fashion before. And it got to the point where, he was literally crying at the end of the race because, obviously this is, the greatest race in, the greatest spectacle in motor racing, as they love to say, but it's not personally, but it's definitely like top 3 races of all time. But he is given his all at this every single year. He says that the Brickyard owes him nothing more and he loves coming here, but I'm really I want nobody to win the Indy 500 more than Pato O'Ward, because I think him and Alex Palou are the 2 most talented drivers on the IndyCar field. And you get a lot of very cool, stand-ins. You'll obviously have a lot of other racers come from different discretions to do the Indy 500, whether that be to fight for the Triple Crown, that kind of thing. But I thought the coolest one this year was having Kyle Larson from NASCAR come in and race the Indy 500. And I think he did a pretty decent job. His finishing position wasn't crazy or anything, but, people have been saying and trying to compare Kyle Larson to Max Verstappen, saying he's the best driver in the world. He's not, but, he is a very, very good racer.
I just want to make the point that just because you don't know who someone is doesn't mean they're better or not as good as someone
because all the F1 fanboys and fangirls.
I'm going to say There's probably some amazing racers in WEC and Rally that nobody knows about just because they're not very famous or don't have a spot on the team.
Yeah.
So I don't like that mentality personally. Like,
It's like, yeah, here's the thing. You always get this with F1 fans, and it really aggravates me. Most F1 fans have no idea who Kyle Larson is.
yes. And like most Americans do just because he is so renowned. I would say like him, Joey Logano is another name that I hear thrown around a lot. But yeah, a lot of people don't know who these guys are.
But it's like, for me personally, I'm a D1 NASCAR hater. I think it's a terrible racing series. And this is somebody who loves all forms of motor racing. And I literally do a podcast on motor racing. Hello, I'm right here. But Kyle Larson is seriously an insanely gifted racing driver. So to, just discount him just because you don't know who he is, I think is very childish. So I think he did a really good job for his first Indy 500.
Put some respect on his name.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't do like a Fernando Alonso first Indy 500 race challenging for the win.
Yeah, but that's Fernando Alonso. That's Chad Alonso.
Yeah, exactly. But he was definitely competitive the entire time.
As you should be.
Yeah, super good race. Indy 500 is, up there for like my favorite race to watch every single year. It's 200 laps, and there's something going on every single lap. And it's the one race where it really tells me ovals can be exciting.
I agree. Do you want to take the Detroit GP or did you already do that?
Yes. My personal home race is happening this weekend. It started on Friday, the Detroit GP. That is where I grew up, for those of you that don't know. Always raced on the streets of Belle Isle, which is an island in the Detroit River. One of Metro Detroit's nicest parks. But last year, they moved it onto the streets of Detroit, where F1 used to race in the 1980s. Really cool track. I know my buddy Ethan's there this weekend.
The split pit lane is really, really cool.
It's really interesting. Yeah, they have a split pit lane for that. But the race is happening later today. But in qualifying, Colton Herta, very, very good racer in IndyCar, had his little stint with being rumored for F1. He took pole position around the streets with a time of 1 minute 5:47, pipping Alex Palou by a margin of 0.152 seconds. So it was a very convincing pole position.
Heck yeah.
On a minute-long lap, almost 0.2 of a second is pretty big.
That's a very fair point because I've never really thought about that. But like the smaller the track, the smaller
having
the
like
margin, the more
like a
it
0.2
is.
gap on Monaco let's say the Red Bull Ring is way different than a 0.2 gap on Spa.
Yes, absolutely. Going over to MotoGP for the last segment of today's pod. We had more racing in Italy. We had rally. We had some other stuff last week. For the sprint, it was a really tight race with Bagnaia winning the sprint in his home country with Marc Marquez behind him by only 1.4 seconds. However, he was handed a three-place penalty due to obstructing Alex Marquez in Friday's practice, knocking him down to fifth for the start of the race. This has resulted in a total Spanish starting three that did not stay the same, with Lucio Marini's nightmares continues as he starts as the back of the grid on the Honda bike.
Did he have issues and he had to take essentially change components in the bike?
He's just the bike has been so unreliable throughout the few years he's been with them. But after that, before we woke up today, we had the actual race. We had Bagnaia take the win in his home country, with Bastianini also taking P2. So it was a P1, P2 for the Italian duo. Good for them. Always good to see winners win in their home race. It's always really cool. The one thing that was kind of shocking about this race was the gap between the top three was all under 1 second. So it was...
Dude, I love that stuff.
But even more shocking, Oliver, out of the 21 cars that classified the finish, which means you finished the same lap, from my knowledge, all of them were within under 50 seconds of each other.
Were there any caution or like yellow flag periods or anything like that?
I do not know.
That's okay. But still, to have everybody finish on the lead lap is really nice as well.
But only 3 drivers that did not, qualify or classify in the race. So it was a really good one. Excited. I think the point system is still shocking to me that 15 places get points instead of 10.
I love it.
I do think it's really fun, and we will do a little bit more of a MotoGP breakdown in a few weeks. But anything else, I'll throw it over to you for the outro. Besides, for the YouTube, and then we can do this stuff. But
We're just weeks out from the 24-hour of Le Mans. I'm going to keep saying it because that is the race I'm most excited for every single year in any discretion of motorsport. I am so hyped for Le Mans this year, just with how insanely good it was last year.
Before I kick it out to you on the YouTube, we're going to kick it out for the audio listeners. Please rate 5 stars wherever you find your podcasts. Subscribe. Go check out the other shows on Aletheo. Listen for Commands coming out later today or tomorrow. And then we have a whole week's worth of Good Morning Hockey coming to you right where you find this podcast. Oliver.
Most definitely.
Take us out like you do.
Like I do every week.
Yes, sir.
Last week's video. This side of my head. On the left side of my head for those of you on YouTube. This is the left side of my head.
That is the right side of your head for the listeners.
No, it's the right side of my head for me. It's
If
the left
I'm
side
watching,
of my head for the
if I'm, yes.
Fight
yes.
me right now.
You're right.
Subscribe this side of my head. I
shut
appreciate you guys. I will see you next week. Thanks, y'all.
Bye, everyone.
Left side of my head. Are you kidding me?